This video is about the breakup of the Non-Sequitur show. This topic has taken many skeptical or evidence-based people and shown that for one reason or another, they are more than willing to ignore all the evidence to come to the conclusion that they want to. So instead of doing like a documentary or a mini doc or video or whatever, I'm just going to focus on the points that changed my mind and the minds of the people that I've talked to. So let's get this started. There are three sides to every argument. One person's side, the other person's side, and then there's the truth. So let's look at Kyle's side, Steve's side, and then break down the evidence so that all that's left is the truth of the Non-Sequitur show.
You think that I doing less? So I helped build this
obviously,
channel.
Yeah, because
obviously, yeah. So I helped build.
Steve.
I helped build this channel from day one, and now you're trying to cut me down on the finances.
I don't think it's racist. I mean, people have preferences, right? I mean, I got busted for saying that I like certain things, right? So I don't see, but if people want to exclude certain things,
where around?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
He can get he can get the 50% up until
no,
where
50
this
in perpetuity.
point started. That's
in
not
perpetuity.
You're excited about that, Steve?
Oh, Adam, my boy Adam.
Yeah. So much.
I'll do 10 shows a week if you want. I am not giving up my stake in this. I've said from day one, 50% in perpetuity for the entire time of the channel. Residuals. That's what I had planned on for my life, Kyle. I feel like you're stealing from me. Wait.
I feel like you're stealing from me. Wait.
After interviewing both Kyle Curtis and Steve McCrae, I've gotten both of their sides on how Non-Sequitur started. If you want to see those videos, just search them on this channel. Basically, they both agree that after Curtis did his 4th episode of the show, Steve being a guest as on one of the episodes, Kyle asked Steve if he wanted to join him as a co-host. After some time, they started the YouTube channel, like most others, very low production value, with many shows for a long time with low viewership. As time went on, Curtis upped the production value and more subscribers started to show up. Just your basic YouTube story. A couple of videos that really earned NONSEQ a lot of their subs was the Aaron Raw discussion, Jeranism, different debates about flat earth with prominent ding-dong flat earthers, and some debates on religion. Really, there isn't much to say here. Many of us were around to see Non-Sequitur grow as a channel. It was pretty common for me to see them in my subscriber feed popping up. After speaking to both Steve and Kyle, there is no argument that Steve started to bully certain guests, Aaron Raw being one of them, with Raw eventually deciding he wouldn't ever go back to Non-Sequitur with Steve being there. Another big creator that got Non-Seq a lot of views and subs that also followed Raw's same decision around Steve was Matt Dillahunty. I've looked into both issues, and it always comes back to Steve telling them that they're wrong about something, them describing to Steve their position, expecting him to come back with further argument or some logical point, but instead Steve would respond with anger and contempt. This wasn't the only issue, as out on social media and blogs, Steve would attack these other creators, like he did with Bill Ludlow towards the end of the show, telling Ludlow that he would rain hell down on him if he ever mentioned McCrae again. All of these situations have the same themes running through them, being the pattern of Steve being told he was wrong or getting criticized, Steve responding angrily to a point of almost being obsessive towards the criticizer afterwards. It seemed like McCrae took it like he was being told he wasn't as smart as he thought or acted like he was. Remember that for later. And the response on social media to be in the favor of the criticizers of McCrae, not the other way around. These are only a few of the issues that NONSEQ had. I want you to notice that during these controversies, Kyle Curtis was doing as much damage control as possible, trying to maintain a relationship with the creators that Steve was attacking with no avail. Steve alienated all of them, and Kyle, despite trying, couldn't do anything about it. If you were to ask me my personal opinion here, this is the first group of issues that will constantly be brought up, and they will all have one thing in common. It's Steve McCrae instead of working towards his own content or doing something productive toward the growth of their show, was doing the opposite and attacking people who criticized him. And just so you understand, this is really bad for a channel. Raw and the others were bringing in massive views. These are the biggest viewed videos on NONSEQ as of today. And anytime a channel finds its stride having this happen, it's like having the channel's legs chopped off. Something else was brewing in the background, and that was the uncomfortability many viewers expressed at McCrae and his tendency toward sexual remarks at much younger women around the show. I have personally interviewed a couple women who made claims at McCrae that McCrae does actualize that these, at least something happened at these, even though in every instance he states that they are plain lying. It's pretty obvious the conversations happen, and that it has also chased away some of the smaller female creators that would have worked on the show, some of which have very high subscriber counts now and do YouTube as a full-time job. Not because of NONSEQ or Steve or Kyle, but because they have good shows. We'll go into this issue later. This all led up to the video I chopped clips from earlier. This video is called The Death of the Non-Sequitur Show. The name was given by McCrae. Remember that. It's the famous video where Kyle finally has enough of McCrae and decides to cut ties with him. This is the part of the story where we will have to take claims from each side and look at the evidence that is there to make our decision on what is more likely or how we feel about the situation. But there was an event that caused this encounter. There was an event that led up to the death of the non-sequitur. It had to do with a $50 patron where McCrae acted like a total bully, agreed in the comments section also, and did exactly what he's done to others. Instead of talking things out with them or arguing points, he resorts to insults and yelling. Here's a video clip. This is the incident that led Kyle to deciding that he couldn't work with Steve any longer. If you look, Steve did this while being logged into the Non-Sequitur Show account, displaying himself as the Non-Sequitur Show, and Kyle wouldn't tolerate it, as he shouldn't have. The clip became quite famous and was discussed all over the platform, combined with the fact that the views were down after the bigger creators were scared away by Steve. It almost baffles the mind that people still act like this is acceptable behavior after so many have not just experienced it off the air, but also it's recorded live many, many times. Part 2. After death of NONSEQ. Now, we're all caught up to the death of the Non-Sequitur Show video. The title alone seems like Steve was resigned, that it was all over after this conversation with Kyle, and he was. I remember talking to him back then before things shifted in the community. It was pretty ironic. Also, because before many other creators weighed in on the video, most of the support was for Kyle and against Steve, other than Steve's fan club, of course. When I first watched the death of NONSEQ, I was inclined to believe that it was unfair that this was happening to Steve. Context of everything else out there happening shows that in the very least Kyle and Steve had to part ways, and that Kyle shouldn't be blamed for making that decision. Maybe he should be blamed for not giving Steve some money in the end, but not for making the decision to kick Steve off. As this video took hold on the internet, Steve was hard at work with hours upon hours of cited, even propagandistic live streams, all pouring in Steve's supporters and repeating over and over themes that, even though they weren't true, would be the basis for McCrae doing everything in his power and with his time to convince YouTube that Kyle stole his money from him and that he was being taken advantage of. Maybe he was, but not in the way that he described. As time went on, more content creators weighed in on Steve. As time went on and more content creators weighed in, Steve was quick to contact anyone that talked about the situation. I remember him agreeing with me on my show that it's insane that Steve didn't get paid, that he, should have been paid, and it was, crazy that Kyle didn't pay him, okay? I can use this topic as a way to demonstrate how McCrae lies and manipulates social media and YouTube into believing what he wants them to instead of what really happened. On my show, he told me that Kyle had kept the NONSEQ money. I was outraged because it seemed unfair, but then again, I didn't even know that Steve just showed up while Kyle did all the work, scheduling, music. I just knew it was unfair. I took Steve's side right away because I couldn't grasp how somebody would tell their YouTube partner to not pay them. Also, I felt this way because Steve lied to me. He lied to my entire audience. He told us all that He only told Kyle to hold his money for a short period of time, and that Steve expected to get paid. He just needed to check and make sure that taking the money wouldn't mess with any of his benefits or finances. I also did videos myself weighing in on the non sequitur situation, and Steve shared them, discussed them, and loved them, never correcting me in thinking that Kyle held Steve's money on purpose and then didn't pay him unfairly. This is what Steve does with any point that he needs to press to make himself look good, to make somebody else look bad, and remember all of that for later. More and more patrons of NONSEQ left the NONSEQ Patreon and joined Steve McCrae's Patreon. Mostly over Kyle stealing Steve's money, but also due to the fact that Steve promised the patrons a new non sequitur that was like the glory day. The only thing that was stopping McCrae was not having enough money and support to do it, and that's why all the creators stepped in to help get the word out, and it worked. Kyle lost support, and Steve took every opportunity to poke fun at Kyle and instigate hate towards him. Part 3. The True Nature of Steve McCrae. After time went on, Kyle had left the internet and McCrae started to get less and less views for attacking Kyle and virtue signaling over what had happened. So he switched to attacking another creator that defended Kyle, Katie Joy Paulson. It's hard to represent how much McCrae attacked Katie Joy Paulson. He did it for a total of 6 months before November. Over the 6 months, he took every shot at her he could. A lot of people didn't understand. We all made excuses for him, like he's under a lot of pressure with Kyle and the channel, but in reality, it was just him being himself. He wanted more and more attention for attacking Katie and got less and less. So eventually, he brought 3 points against her. This is around the time that he asked me to weigh in and make a video on him versus her, a playlist I do sometimes called Versus Mode. The points against Katie were mostly as follows. I'll sum them up. Saying that she filed a false strike against another creator named Leslie, duh, you've heard about it a million times, and that Steve had screenshots of Katie saying horrible things about a little boy that just passed away, aka Leslie's nephew. And there were other things. We'll go into them maybe in a little bit. We'll see. But some really messed up stuff around this time. After I did the video, my live streams about the subject got a lot of attention, and McCrae got very obsessive against Katie, spending an entire day on Twitter talking about her son, something that I criticized him for in a very friendly type way, letting him know he had gone too far, thinking that he might accept the critique, maybe wake up, that he was getting too into the subject, attacking kids. For those of you that saw this happen live, it was quite a show. Either way, this led to him attacking me mercilessly for a week, saying things like I had lost all honor as a veteran of the Iraq War due to criticizing Steve McCrae. I, of course, will put the tweets on the screen. He went much further, trying to attack my channel, my reputation. All of it was a complete 180 to the hours of combined discussion where he talked so positively about my videos and work. I immediately knew something was very wrong. Somebody who is high IQ, genius level smart, wouldn't act the way he was acting. This led me to look into the videos that Steve had told me were from troll channels, and luckily some of those videos contained evidence. I noticed very quickly that McCrae was the person that many people say he is in regards to trolling, harassing, but you're gonna ask me, what does this all have to do with the truth of non sequitur? Well, everything. I'll explain as we go on, of course. Something interesting happened to me after I criticized McCrae. Most of you know this, by the way. The people out there, like Katie Joy Paulson and many others that had known what Steve really was this whole time, finally reached out to me with the evidence that they had against Steve. And quickly, I went into video production to take the evidence and show the world that Steve was lying about Katie Joy Paulson. Without a crystal ball, YouTube. I'll give you one example and show you the evidence, but if you want it all, watch my video from December called Versus Mode Part 2 and my response to Steve McCrae from back then. All of those videos contain all the evidence. I'll probably pull some images from them for this video. Katie had told me she never struck Leslie at all, and that Leslie's channel was already down, and that she could prove it, and I did too, by the way, but anyway. And that's exactly what I proved in Versus Mode Part 2, but the ironic thing is, I didn't just do the video, I sent the information and evidence to Steve McCrae and his friends. I still had hope in the back of my mind that once he saw the proof from Social Blade that Leslie's video never went down, and once he saw the evidence that Leslie put out a fake email strike from YouTube to convince the community that Katie had struck her, I thought Steve would snap out of it and fix what he was doing and get his shit together. And I was so very wrong. Even up until the week of making this video, he is still attacking Katie Joy over these fake things, telling people that the strike was real against Leslie, all the evidence, and using the screenshots against Katie. He just can't be honest. It's just, he will not be honest about it. He hates Katie. He has to have that stuff be true, even if it can be proven to be fake.
Phase 5, Birth of the Boomer.
This is important to realize. This matters to the non sequitur story. Aaron, Ron, and the others that Steve had gotten angry at told tales of how they were being harassed on social media. And ironically, Katie Joy and even myself started to experience this after McCrae got mad at us. I won't go into much more around this time frame for the video. We'll go on for hours if I do. But some of the highlights include Steve's private groups where he rallied people to attack. The people he was angry at had their DMs leaked out, confirmed, and video clips of Steve McCrae trying to dox me and Steve having a friend dox Creepshow Art came out. I will refer you to the Creepshow Art video on the subject that she just released. The title is, quote, Lily Jean tried to dox me, or something to that effect, where Creepshow discusses Steve and Lily Jean's mom, their harassment campaign against Creepshow, which is exactly similar to the one against Katie and I. Also in this video clip, Steve McCrae is discussing my personal details with people trying to dox me.
Contract in perpetuity.
A major discovery came out around this time that debunked Steve McCrae and his crying about Kyle stealing his money. You see, Steve has told everybody that Kyle had kept his cash in order to steal it from him, when in reality, Steve told Kyle not to pay him. And the reason explains everything. So here is a clip of Steve arguing with Shannon.
Did Kyle give you the opportunity to have money, but you weren't able to take it because you were on Social Security or veterans pension, and it would have affected that? And Kyle didn't, because you're making it seem as though Kyle withheld money from you.
No,
when
let me make this very clear. I asked, Kyle said he would talk to me how it could be distributed. I asked him, okay, that's fine. Let's talk about how you're going to get it to me. He has never once told me how he's going to get it to me. He's never offered to have a discussion of how he's going to get it to me. I said, Kyle, that's fine. Let's figure out how you're going to get it to me. I thought he was going to bring it to me in October when we have this meeting in October. He can bring cash.
Steve tells Shannon that he did tell Kyle to hold his money and pay him under the table later. This is different than what he represented to me and the internet long ago during the beginning of the situation. Now it's obvious that Steve didn't get paid because of his own actions, not Kyle's. Kyle tried many times, and Steve acknowledges that he refused the money and told Kyle to keep it in the non sequitur accounts. The issue is if you attack your channel, tell everybody to unsubscribe from it while your money is in the channel accounts, and the worth of the channel bottoms out, you're probably going to have a hard time recouping your money. Also, the person that's paying you isn't likely to hand it over if you're actively trying to destroy the business. This is Kyle's side to why he didn't pay Steve. And all those skeptical YouTubers out there just hand wave it away like it's nothing. This is massive. I do understand that Kyle probably spent too much money, but with Kyle proving that over and over he tried to pay out Steve, and Steve admitting that this was true and had to deny taking the money so that government, either for Social Security, medical benefit, or some other debt that he owes, God knows what the real reason is. He would never tell us the truth ever anyways. It's probably the same reason that the guy hasn't had a job in a long time. Either way, when Kyle shows that Steve willingly and knowingly refused to take the check and Kyle refused to pay under the table as Steve wanted in the clip, the point is that Kyle didn't do it. Steve did. Steve needs to take responsibility for the fact that he didn't get paid because it is his fault. And yes, should Kyle pay him something? Yes, but what does Kyle do if the money's gone and it's just a mess? All of them made mistakes. That's my major point. All of them made mistakes. They both messed this channel up, but Steve will have you attack Kyle and fight to get him the channel back without any evidence of the real reason why. Also, anyway, I'll just move on. I got to stop. I'll move on. The point is that the skeptic community out there is defending McCrae using the excuse that Kyle stole Steve's money, which is an outright lie, and why I won't support that BS any longer. Steve could have been honest about it and not lied through his teeth so that we would all hate Kyle and chase him off the internet with our videos, comments, and tweets. Basically, he lied to us that Kyle was stealing the NONSEQ money so that he could get a hate train thrown at Kyle for revenge. I don't think he ever expected Curtis to leave the internet, but when Curtis did, that is when Steve's lies went astronomical. The things he told the community started to be completely different than the things he had said early on, and then we went back and watched the Death of the Non Sequitur show again. This time we were actually hearing it from Kyle's side and from a neutral perspective. We did it live. When you watch it this way, and I urge you to go watch it again now, but think of it from Kyle's side. When you watch it this way, you hear Steve talking to a boss, then you hear Kyle straight out telling Steve that it's not 50-50 ownership and it's not perpetuity. Then it seems like Kyle's saying there was a 50-50 agreement to pay Steve 50-50 for the videos that he was in. So was it getting conflated? Was it not? Well, this is why you don't illegally record somebody. And I refer you to the beginning of the video where Reds tells Kyle that the video isn't live. We're not going live. And he tries specifically to say live because he wants Kyle to think he's going to not record him. And you watch it and tell me if that's not true. I think it's disgusting and it's just horrible the way that all this happened. But Reds and Steve and Kyle all messed up. And everybody wants to treat Reds and Steve like they're angels. Go fund the angels. Okay, I'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, the thing we all have to focus on now is that after realizing McCrae has lied, bullied, harassed, doxed, and propagandized the community, you can't trust his word, which is what the majority of all of the skeptic community is doing. I mean, think about it. If there was a 50-50, there would be massive amounts of dialogue between Kyle and Steve that would show a 50-50 type discussion. Yet, Steve has never been able to present that. He reduced himself to presenting old Google Hangout conversations, and even then it didn't look like it was a 50-50. It looked like Kyle was the boss. Like in the situation where Steve begs Kyle not to kick him off the show like a year before. He doesn't bring up a 50-50. He doesn't bring up the agreement. He's telling his boss to not kick him off. Now, I get it. There's other people that think completely differently because of other clips, and you're right. You want to know why? Because they didn't have a written contract. And when you don't have a written contract, it means that whoever owns it, owns it. You get me? When you don't, you get the written contract to protect yourself. Everybody's acting like Steve should be given this massive amount of support when he's the one that chose not to get a written contract so that it wouldn't inflate his benefit or his death videos. Anyway, let me get back on script here. They didn't write out the terms. Whether Steve is lying, whether Kyle is lying, regardless of who's being honest or not, all we have in front of us are the claims and the evidence. And from those things, the way it looks is that the two people didn't put their business into a contract. And both of them admit to this, by the way. They didn't write out the terms. They didn't even decide on the terms. They didn't do this because McCrae didn't want it weighing on his benefits or debts, whichever it is. And because of this fact that Steve himself doesn't even contest, he agrees that it's true. Watch his channel and hear it yourself, because Steve willingly and knowingly refused to put on paper the contract. It's not our place to fight his battle for him, which is exactly what he is wanting you to do. And that's what the unending content is, because McCrae isn't even genius enough to realize one of the greatest points that exposes him, that after gaining the patrons from NONSEQ, he had everything he needed to continue the show on his own. And he chose not to, provably, to attack Katie Joy, to attack other women, to harass people on the platform, to do months and months of content that in a weird twist of fate, those donators that left NONSEQ are paying for him to be doing those things. I just can't see Steve McCrae as the good guy who is worthy of your victimhood after just the beginning of this, let alone the rest of the stuff you've heard. But you want to know about the truth behind him on the platform. Well, the next place we go is the GDC. Steve has always ran a channel called The Great Debate Community since I've known him and since before, right? If you go out on the web and just barely search through the old GDC, you find that Steve didn't make the GDC. He didn't create it. He wasn't an owner, and that the original GDC has been making videos criticizing Steve for stealing their community name and clout and momentum and using it to be monetized on his channel so that he keeps the money. When they approached him to expose him for this, he kicked them out of the community and kept it ever since. He stole the Great Debate Community. I can't even believe that he's still running it. It seems so dumb, but he is, because he just doesn't care. He will tell you that these creators are trolls that follow him around everywhere he goes, which isn't true. Maybe there are some out there, but for the most part, after watching their content a little bit, they have documented with evidence Steve stealing their community. It's all over the place. I'd start with the brass tacks document or the video of King Steve getting drunk and just rambling about how he created the GDC, but then making the admission that he didn't later the next day when he sobered up, and just angering everybody. Anyway, though, I might do a video about this in the future because it's just insane to think somebody can steal a community, but the evidence is there. It's easy to find, and if you don't go find it, that's your problem. It's just easy. Next phase, the downfall. The irony and the reason that I bring up the GDC is because he's doing the same thing to NONSEQ that he did to the GDC. Steve is being accused by Kyle Curtis of trying to steal Kyle's channel, even though you high and mighty skeptics out there refuse to admit it. This is the second community that he's accused of stealing, but in reality, you could say that he leeches everywhere he goes, because every time he ends up working with a creator that will ask questions, call out BS on their platform, criticize regardless of who it is, those people end up criticizing McCrae, and it all leading to the same results. I mean, for God's sake, he did everything in his power to entertain Teen Mom viewers for months to hold on to their viewership after attacking Katie. If you watched him around this time, you know what I mean. All I can really add to the internet waking up to what McCrae does is that it's not hard to tell that he doesn't do his own content. He will clickbait out somebody else or some drama like defending Lily Jean as the only creator out there that is willing to do it, because Steve is the only creator that is willing to ignore all of the evidence. So you'll say that these are just a few examples of if Steve is this bad, where are the other examples of him repeating this behavior? The behavior that got him axed from NONSEQ and everywhere else he goes? Well, let's talk about him defending Earl Warden. And the best way I can do that is with a Nate Brody video. Nate Brody is one of the original members of the GDC that Steve first blocked for calling out Steve collecting money on their community name and brand.
Does that mean he's innocent? Well, Steve McCrae thinks so. And Steve McCrae writes on Twitter, he was convicted and always maintained as innocent. He never served a day in prison for rape. And then Steve then doubled down on it, saying 10 years probation, no jail time. I believe his rendition of the story. You believe what you want. Steve also believes Brock Turner is innocent. Now, because of his conviction, Earl David Warden is a lifetime registrant on the sex offender registry. So that means he must register for life. And this isn't the end of his horrible criminal activity. So now we had the serial rapes, and he was on probation for 10 years. In 1992, he violated that probation by carrying a firearm. So he was duly convicted and imprisoned for that felony violation. Again, in 1998, he was found.
A rape didn't actually take place.
I believe it was consensual, which means it wouldn't be.
Yes.
I happen to believe this guy. I've talked to his best friend. He believes him wholeheartedly. His fans believe him, and he has a huge dedicated fan base. If I'm wrong on that, okay, then I just made a judgment, an error in judgment.
To end out this issue of RA, Steve once tweeted and argued that all Catholics are RA because they support the Catholic Church, but was willing to call Earl David Warden an honorable man who did nothing wrong. Steve and Chesh think that the woman didn't have a crime committed on them, remember? He can't maintain his own logic and reasoning. He morphs it to defend himself or to attack his enemies, or in case of the Catholics, to try and impress his atheist viewership. The last thing I'll say about the death of NONSEQuitor before moving into the sum up is many different women that accuse Steve of harassment. I only briefed on this earlier. He told me personally that Katie accused him of harassment in a Twitter conversation. He sent me the tweets and I did a video on it. He watched it and shared it and praised it on his channel. The issue? He didn't tell me that Katie had accused him of harassment on the phone, not on Twitter. When I first spoke to Katie, this was the first thing that she got on me for, deservedly. But I was confused until I explained to her why I said what I said in my video, because McCrae had lied to me and framed a tweet to be able to back up his lie. In my opinion, he does things that he regrets later because of an anger problem or when he gets drunk, and the only thing he can do to defend himself is to lie. After experiencing him lying to me about this serious subject, I have gone back and rewatched all the non-sequitur stuff without giving McCrae any benefit of the doubt, only believing what he has evidence to back up. This is why I've changed my mind so drastically on Steve, non-sequitur, and the other topics around McCrae. I also think it is why people like Team Skeptic and others still back Steve after all of this, not realizing how many people are awake to his lies. Although, this brings me to my last subject that's outside of the non-sequitur, and that is how Steve is able to accomplish so much lying, harassing, berating, doxing, and outright changing of recorded history with intelligent, skeptical people buying into the BS the whole time. He's able to do this because he has the support of a few friends around him. At first, I thought they were just defending Steve because Steve was advertising their channels and making them a little bit of money and 2 or 3 subs here and there. But it still sat weird with me because Steve doesn't have a big following. He doesn't have a huge impact or a big pull to make other people money. Now he has no influence, but back then he barely had any either. Until I realized the biggest red flag of all, thanks to many of Steve's ex-donators that started looking into some strange things. They remembered about giving money to people because of Steve McCrae, and this is where it all comes together. A small group of creators all do constant GoFundMe campaigns. The ex-donators made a spreadsheet and tracked all the GoFundMe's fundraisers where the goal wasn't proven or changed or had some other red flag that made the campaign, the fund drive, relevant for criticism. But the worst thing about it is that over a period of a couple years, Steve McCrae, Red's Rhetoric, Sean Hufford, AT2 Pro Doxing, Cy Strikling, Marvel Girl, and maybe a couple others have asked their community for over $120,000 that we can track just on an initial glance in crowdfunding. This is outside of ad revenue, outside of donation money. Recently, Sly Sparkane thought he would criticize me for talking about this, saying that I have done some egregious thing by having a Patreon and a pay link in my streams. By the way, Sly Sparkane, you are criticizing the entirety of live streaming and the entirety of content production. Good job, ding dong. Also, I'm waiting on your evidence to be put out against me, by the way. Where's your evidence that I do these egregious things that they do? How is what I do worse than what they do? Because you do realize when you criticize people, you either criticize everybody. Where is the evidence, Sly? Let's see it, my dude. Oh, wait, you don't have any? That's what I thought. Okay. I think he's just defending these guys anyway, but I'll move. He just wanted mentioned. Now he got what he wanted. But, Sly Sparkane, I can put out some evidence against your buddies that you're defending. They don't do video production or live streams, and they don't just share their link, which is accepted and customary on YouTube. They virtue signal an emergency, like Sean Hufford, who received over $5,000 or $6,000 thanks to Red's Rhetoric, Steve McCrae, and the other GoFund Steve squad, sharing and spreading the campaign for him to move to Florida to get a job with Red's Rhetoric, solving Sean's issue. Later, he goes live telling everybody that they must do another thousands and thousands of dollars because the money was stolen from his bank account. And Sly Sparkane doesn't give a shit to criticize criticize that, but he'll talk crap about me. This behavior wasn't criticized by Steve or anyone else, including Sly Sparkane, even though he sure clickbaited a video out of me. Sorry, my script kind of repeated something I'd already said. Sean didn't use the money for what he said he needed it for, so basically the people that were donating were conned, and was live again asking for more, lying about having it stolen from a bank account, giving excuses on why he couldn't call the cops and report this happening. I could go on for another hour just listing GoFundMe/fundraisers that Steve, Reds, Sean, and the rest have done that didn't accomplish what they said they were going to do. Even though they received more than enough money to do it, they didn't prove that they did what they were going to do. I know Sly Sparkane has a hard time following, and I know once he sees the evidence here, he's going to do another video where he criticizes them and apologizes to me, right? Well, no, because he's only doing this to defend them. Anyway, though, I know Sly has a hard time following this, but this all starts to relate to Steve McCrae and Red's rhetoric when you realize that the same people doing all the fundraisers every 3 weeks to a month, if not sooner, are all people that blindly defend Steve and people that Steve pulls in to fight his battles when NONSEQuitor broke up and after. Pretty interesting, isn't it? It becomes apparent that this group of people have clips of them threatening people with their locations. The accusations from Aaron Raw and other big creators like Mr. Atheist and more. Also, the constant accusations of McCrae harassing women, all of these things are blindly defended by this group who try to appear as unconnected internet friends that defend each other on the net. In reality, they all know what they're doing. It goes even deeper when the ex-donators started to notice that these creators were donating big amounts at the start of the next campaign. So they were funneling money from one campaign into the next, like paying their friend the cut of the money they didn't, they got to spread that wealth around, right? That's why they all share it. It's why they all defend each other. You get me? Let me explain it clearly, though, for Sly Sparkane, who cannot follow the issue. When you combine all the irrational, evidenceless defenses of McCrae from this small group with the fact that they are all abusing their community regularly with fundraising campaigns, while at the same time always attacking other creators like Sly Sparkane did to me in his last video. I wonder if he's going to get a GoFundMe campaign here in the next couple months. It shows the reason for the behavior. There is more to this small group of cons than meets the eye. So, what is my ending opinion on Kyle and NONSEQ? He made a lot of mistakes. If he will correct them going into the future, good, because that's what he said he was going to do. He admitted to what he did wrong and said he's going to correct it going forward. That's the most I could ask for. I even offer that same benefit to Steve and his counterparts also. I just know they won't take me up on it like Kyle claims to have. On the internet, you're always going to find people that will do anything to make a dollar here, and when they lack the talent to actually provide content, live stream, entertaining videos, a lot of the time, they will resort to these other means to get the money they want. With these guys, constant GoFundMe and crowdfunding campaigns wrapped around begging and virtue signaling, and trying to steal channels that they've been kicked off of due to their horrid behavior towards women and other people. NONSEQuitor brought this group a lot of attention and money. If McCrae was smart, he'd have been doing the new NONSEQ for a year now with a growing Patreon. Now the internet knows the truth, and we just sit back and laugh, because what else can you do? This is the end of the story. Kyle and Steve are waiting to see if a judge will throw Steve's case out, because Steve admits that he didn't serve Kyle properly. Now, for some reason, there's idiots like the Atheist Edge out there that just don't get it. Legally, a court doesn't have jurisdiction over you if you're not served properly, Atheist Edge, you ding-dong. When are you, Atheist Edge, and other ding-dongs out there going to put yourself in their shoes? You have somebody who helps you with your channel, and all of a sudden, that person's claiming that it's their channel. What are you going to do, Atheist Edge, when all of a sudden you realize they're suing you for the channel that you started and that you own, and they served you at the wrong address and you never got your summons? Are you just going to walk into court and say it's no big deal? Oh, hell no, you hypocrite. You're going to ask for it to be thrown out the same way Kyle is. Stop doing Steve McCrae's dirty work. Actually, keep doing it. It tells all of us actual skeptical, high IQ people who not to watch. So thank you for that, my dude. But honestly, I don't care enough to keep track of this anymore. I wanted to get this video out because I promised it to you, just because, you know, every story has 3 sides. Whose do you believe? Kyle's or Steve's? Or do you believe in the truth of the Non Sequitur show? UNIRock out.